Whoa. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the second Ask Alchemix live stream. We're live streaming on both YouTube and Instagram right now. This is a segment of Alchemix where you can submit your questions via Instagram, whether it's comments or direct messages. You can submit your questions on Twitter at Alchemixology. You can submit your questions on the YouTube comments as well. And right now, luckily, we're at the size where we can answer pretty much all of them. Facebook as well. And we actually have a couple of questions from TikTok today as well. So it is Irish coffee for me today. I do hope that those of you at home will partake in the boozing, as you will. I'm incredibly excited about tomorrow's episode of Whiskey Wednesday. It is going to be covering Jameson, and I very methodically planned it out so that we would be starting with a bourbon, moving on to a Scotch next, and then Irish whiskey third. From there, we'll do Japanese and a couple other categories and a few more esoteric categories of whiskey as well. And from that point on, we're going to be basically spending an entire month on each particular category, starting with bourbon. So we'll spend an entire month covering bourbon. It's very much designed for you to learn. On that note, one of the questions that we got is, are you switching over from cocktails to whiskey? And the answer is no, we're not doing that. In fact, the entire Whiskey Wednesday segment is still very much built around the cocktail. The whole idea was that we would talk a lot about the spirits, but also go into the cocktail that best fits that particular whiskey. I do love whiskey, but that's not what it's still very much mixology forward, and there's certainly going to be other spirits that we cover in very similar type of segments. I am here in the Alchemist Lab, where this is all concocted. Before I get too off into the weeds, I'm going to take a little sip. Oh, man. So we reviewed Jameson, and it's coming out in an episode tomorrow, and we're going to be putting it in an Irish coffee. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. It'll be premiering at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and I will be in the chat so you can go watch and ask me any questions about whiskey or Jameson. It's very in-depth. We cover a lot of nuanced, and it's kind of, the whole segment is certainly designed for whiskey nerds of a certain sort, right? So in the nature of whiskey, I should say, in the Irish coffee, this is half ounce of Demerara sugar syrup, half ounce of, out of it, 2 ounces of Irish whiskey. We made it with Jameson, obviously, yesterday for the video, and I actually made it with Slain today, which is pretty good. That one's been on my back bar for a while since I lived in New York. So, not much of a difference. The great thing about an Irish coffee is that, you definitely want to use a high quality whiskey, but if you don't, it's not going to be the end of the world. And it is getting cold, at least where I'm from. It's getting colder for sure. So 2 ounces of Slain, 4 ounces of espresso. That's the way I like to make it. And then a heavy cream shook up in a shaker tin with a coil of a Hawthorne strainer. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's like one of my favorites. I first tried this at the Dead Rabbit, actually. And if we weren't reviewing Jameson yesterday, then I would have probably made it with their recommended powers in their cocktail book. But yeah, again, you don't need the best whiskey in the world to go in an Irish coffee. So grated nutmeg on top for garnish as well. It's phenomenal. It's so good. It goes down too fast. And the 4 main food groups: coffee, sugar, fat, and caffeine. All right, no, that's sorry, and alcohol. Caffeine, sugar, fat, and alcohol. All right, let's jump right into the first question. Jen submitted a question on Facebook. What are your favorite sipping whiskeys? And do you prefer Scotch or Irish? That's really funny as we jump into the Whiskey Wednesday segment. If I had it my way, I wouldn't prefer either Scotch or Irish, other than the fact that I love to try just different varieties of things. So I prefer to sip a bourbon. And this bourbon right behind me, Blanton's, is one of my go-tos to sip on. That's really funny that bourbon wasn't even in the question, but I do appreciate the question. I'm definitely getting some flack for my opinions on why bourbon is superior to Scotch or Irish whiskey. But, you know, that being said, again, I still like Scotch and Irish, obviously. Yeah, I don't really know what else to go into there. Blanton's is my favorite. That's a little hard to get. Like anything from the Buffalo Trace Distillery. There's also Eagle Rare. I'm lucky enough to have a bottle right here of that I sip on quite a bit. I love a Four Roses single barrel. Michter's is one of my favorites. That's also still a family-owned distillery, so I'm a big fan of them. Let's see. So if I had to pick one of my favorite scotches to sip on, is Lagavulin or Ardbeg or Lafroig. You know, if I'm going Scotch, I love the peat. I'm going to go real deep into the peat, and I can sip one of these. I really don't need to dress it up or anything. I love the smokiest of all scotches. In fact, I can go way deeper on the parts per million of peat than a lot of people. For those you don't know, there's a parts per million scale of peat. I even have Peat Monster and one called Smokehead, I believe is the name. And don't quote me because I don't know the exact thing, but I think the big 3 they're called from the Isla region that are very heavily peated, Lagavulin, Lafroig, and Ardbeg, are all somewhere in the realm of 40 parts per million of peat. And if you contrast that with Smokehead or Peat Monster, those are like in the 200s. So they're way more smoky, way more intense. As far as Irish goes, I just, you know, I love like a Redbreast 12. I can sip on that. That's great. So those are my top 3. Okay. Malcolm from Instagram. Where was the place you first had a transformational cocktail? You know, that's interesting because there's a few of them. The first one was actually probably the library at the Nomad Hotel in New York City. Yeah, it was funny because that was when I'd first started Alchemix, and I mentioned before, it was just an agency back then. So we were only running social media for bars and restaurants. None of this existed yet. And, you know, starting a business, working as a bartender, I had roommates. This was tricky. And I wandered in there just because I actually had Google searched where like lounge type of areas for quiet work or coffee shop vibes or something along those lines. I used to do that all the time. There used to be a place, it's not really, it doesn't exist in the same capacity anymore, but there used to be a place called the Ace Hotel with a coffee shop attached in Midtown as well, which was right around the corner from that actually. And so those were my two go-tos. And I wandered in there and I had no idea that it was like one of the best bars in the world at the time. And I got a paper plane, which I had that but never in that capacity. And it just opened up this world to me that I've never seen before. And that was when I realized like the way you shake, the ice you use can transform a cocktail in a way that you'd never guess. You know, just the minor differences in shaking can like cause a cocktail to be exponentially better and stuff like that. And so, and plus just the vibe, I fell in love with bar design there. And I'll talk more about that later. I had also later wandered into the Pegu Club, which I'm a huge fan of. And I think I had a gin mule there. And that cocktail also changed my life and was very incredibly transformational. And there's one more that always sticks with me. There's like three main ones, and I don't know if I remember off the top of my head. Those are the main two. So let me move on, and then if I can think of it, then I'll get back to it. All right. Andy from Twitter submitted a direct message via Alchemixology. Am I the only weirdo that likes to sip gin straight? No, not at all. In fact, it is rare compared to a lot of other spirits. I myself like to sip gin neat every once in a while, especially when I'm trying it. I love very like floral herbal gin, so it can be tough to drink a lot of those kind of gins without just overpowering the palate and tiring at the palate. But I like a nice clear rock, just a little ice at least. But certainly when I'm trying gin, I'll drink it neat. And I've been known to drink a sapphire over a big rock every now and again. You know, alcohol is weird, man. Me and many other people that I know go through phases where I'll sometimes, especially when I was first starting, where I will go months without drinking anything except for one particular spirit, even if it's something just like rum. When I was first introduced to rum, I just realized, I was like, this world is so big, so vast. All I could drink was rum and rum cocktails for an entire month. So certainly that's happened to me with gin as well. Gin is, in fact, my favorite spirit. I think that whiskey's a close second for sure. But yeah, it's a shame. Most people don't know how to drink gin. It's shocking how many times people like... In fact, this happened the other night at a private event. I put together 4 banging cocktails for this corporate event that we did. And it was on a rooftop. And, you know, it wasn't, with the greatest respect, it wasn't these people weren't exactly refined drinkers. So I made this smoke cocktail. There's a little bit of a show and the whole thing, right? But one of them was banging. It was actually kind of a twist on... between a bee's knees and a white lady. So it had like a split sweetener of, it was actually like Grand Marnier instead of like orange liqueur, honey syrup as well, egg white. We used a local gin out of Colorado, excuse me, and from some fresh lemon juice. And it was garnished with like this flavored sticker that had the logo on it. And this chick was like, I hate gin. I can't do it. I never have been able to. And I go, let me guess. You had a bad experience with gin when you were like 13, 14. Not suggesting anybody underage drink or anything like that. Obviously, you should only drink if you're of age. Obviously, many people don't. But you had a bad experience when you were young, whatever it was, and you never drank gin again. She goes, yeah. And I just knew it. I mean, there was a guy who told me that in his 60s. And I remember, this is a real booze bag thing, but I remember just feeling this sense of like deep sadness for him, because I'm like, you missed out on this entire world because the first time you ever drank gin, you didn't drink it right. And so, yeah, it's not to be pounded, I don't think, but I don't really think any alcohol is, for the most part. Although I've been known to still do a shot here and there, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I sip gin. I love gin. A good gin you can drink neat. It shouldn't be too sulfury. It should be very flavorful. I mean, look, if people can sip vodka, they can sip gin. Like, a good gin is just a more flavorful vodka at the end of the day. All right, I think that about covers that. What are some of the best Irish whiskeys other than JMO? I haven't yet been able to experience the entire world of Irish whiskey because where I'm from, Jameson is really the only Irish available, and frankly, that's pretty much all people drink. Yeah, that's a sad thing. I mean, look, I do hope you guys tune in to, I mean, we definitely selected this question, I'm assuming, based on tomorrow's video. I do hope you guys tune in for the 3rd episode of Whiskey Wednesday. It's our first Irish episode, so I'm really excited about it. So yeah, I guess I kind of went over one of my favorites already is Red Breast. That's pot still only. And in our full deep dive tomorrow, I do a little bit of explaining the difference between like pot still and column still whiskey. But we will, get into more depth on that in future Whiskey Wednesday episodes. Irish whiskeys. I had a rep that was really great that was the one that turned me on to Slane. And in fact, I'm fairly sure that I still have the same bottle of Slane from New York City when I got it from him. So it's not bad. It's definitely one of the ones that's up and coming. As part of my research for this Whiskey Wednesday, I listened to a podcast from Bartender at Large, which I happen to like a lot of the time. I think they're doing a good job in recent years. There's a great episode recently about cocktail philosophy, but the one I recently listened to was from one of the master distillers or head U.S. rep from Tullamore Dew. I have no idea what his name is. I don't remember. But they, I believe now, as of the last decade, surpassed Powers to become the second in line to Jameson. So that's a decent product. I think that, I'm a huge fan of the Jameson Caskmates series right now. There's like a IPA and a stout edition that are fantastic, I think, which I would prefer to drink over a regular JMO. Red Breast is going to come in a little bit more expensive. I think 12 years, roughly 60-ish a bottle, I would guess on average. That's what it is where I'm from as well. So yeah, this is part of the thing too, and we go into this a little bit in the episode tomorrow. The Irish kind of shot themselves in the foot when it comes to whiskey. In 1900, they had 58 distilleries, and they accounted for 60% of the world's consumption of whiskey. They owned 60% of the entire world market on whiskey. And then if you flash forward to like to 1980, they had 2 distilleries with 1% market share. Part of it's not their fault. There's a combination of the temperance movement, prohibition in the US, and then once they gained independence from Britain as well, Britain put an embargo on Irish, so they weren't selling to the US or Britain anymore. Then World War II happened, so that obviously messed up a lot of things. But to top it all off, for some reason, they put like this ridiculously high export tax on Irish whiskey. I hear the story goes because they wanted to they wanted to mostly drink their own domestically or something like that. So they disincentivized exporting it, which opened up the floodgates for Scotland to basically take over the world starting in like the mid 1970s. To top it all off, what's even worse than that is that they still to this day have a 12% excise tax on whiskey in Ireland, which is like 3 times for a bottle of whiskey, which is like 3 times the amount of the country second in line to that, which I think is Spain or Portugal. Maybe it's, I think it's Portugal for wine and Spain for whiskey. Yeah. So the taxation over there is like ridiculous. They're disincentivizing whiskey making still to this day, and they could be doing a better job if it wasn't for that. There's also what they call the Irish loophole, which says that Irish whiskey does not have to be aged in oak. This is also the same for Japanese and Canadian whiskey. It's not the case for Scotch and bourbon. So they age it in other weird stuff. So there's a bunch of reasons why. I mean, they should own they should have the vast majority of the world market share of whiskey. But because of all the aforementioned reasons, they just don't. So yeah, so that's why, Jameson just went fast and far after all this, starting in the 1980s. It was Pernod Ricard that purchased them, I believe, in 88 and got a ridiculously good price because, Irish whiskey didn't really start coming back until the last 2 decades, maybe, largely because of them. And I forgot to mention this in the video tomorrow, but yeah, it's ironic because it's a French portfolio that owns them, and John Jameson himself was a Scotsman. So this whole like Irish first bullshit, it just it's hurting them, not helping them. And so yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, enough about that. Larissa S. from Instagram says, why isn't Irish whiskey more popular? I guess I kind of just covered that in many ways. I do think that it hopefully is going to make a resurgence, but I guess a lot of that is going to be up to the powers that be. Dude, that bar is banging. Did you build it yourself? Wow. Well, I do appreciate that. That's John from YouTube. Yeah, I do appreciate that. I built this during COVID times. I was also working with a contractor, and we designed and built 3 home bars, and we just did our first commercial back bar as well. As a consultant, I've designed like the inside of the physical bars when it comes to refrigeration and the ice wells and the whole setup, because that's a very important part of like efficiency in cocktail bars. But I wanted to be, I've wanted to design bars for a long time. One of the things that spoke to me, going back to an earlier question, at the Pegu Club and at the Nomad Hotel, was that the interior design was just so incredibly fantastic. It was like life-changing to me. And I'm one of these guys where the ambiance like really truly matters to me, and it makes a big difference in the drinking experience. So yeah, I mean, a lot of exciting announcements around Christmas holiday time, but the bar design firm is pretty much fully up and running, and we're designing and being a part of the building process of commercial and home bars. Andy, on that note, this is TikTok. What's the still for? The still is for recipes that I have long worked on that I'm not ready to announce quite yet. That is all the questions that I have for the moment. I'm very excited. I love doing these live streams. I need to get a little more pep in my step. Irish coffees help. And you can submit your questions at Alchemixology on Twitter. Tweet at us. We retweet every tweet. You can reach out to me at Tommy Alchemy on Instagram, Tommy Alchemy on Twitter as well, Alchemix Official on Instagram. Just leave a comment or send us a message. You can leave a YouTube comment, and we will answer all the questions in the following week on the Ask Alchemix live streams. I love doing these. It kind of lets me get my my teaching bug out, which I really truly do love to do. So I do want to thank everybody for your support thus far. I don't think I really have anything else. But tune in to the premiere of Whiskey Wednesday episode 3 tomorrow, premiering 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, that's my time, and 7 p.m. Pacific time. I do hope to see you all there. As always, I am Tommy Paul. Cheers.